All right. Hi, folks. Let me just adjust my camera. I think I've got it where I want it. Okay. Hope you're all doing very well on this fine Sunday. Let me begin by lighting a candle. Let's see. Let me get that in the frame. And I will light some Palo Santo. Hi, Sanja. Hi, Starry Night. I'm doing just fine today. I hope everyone's doing really well. I've been busy with other things. I know I haven't live streamed in, I think it's been 5 days, which is, I'm still trying to get in at least one a week. Sometimes I can do more, but it depends. Other priorities come up, other responsibilities. All right, we've got some good smoke going here. And I'll leave that on the dish to burn out. I have a cup of this is Bigelow vanilla chai that I'm drinking today. Delicious. All right, and today is the 22nd. And so let's get the list started. Sanja and Starry Night are first to request. And then it looks like we have something from Priscilla. So I'll put Priscilla on the bottom of the list. All right, let me do some preliminary shuffling as these cards, I can't remember if I've used them for my own readings in the last 5 days, but let's clear them, make sure they're totally random. It takes a minimum of 7 good riffle shuffles. Mathematically speaking, that's what I understand. 7 good riffle shuffles will randomize the deck. All right, I'll add Sarah Psalm to the bottom of the list. Okay, so I think we're ready to start with a reading. And so, Sanja, you were first here to request. And so, if you'd care to post your question, I will read for you first. Okay, so Sanja has a question about someone, Darijo or Darijo, who contacted Sanja on the internet. And the question is he real and normal, or is there someone else behind his profile? Dari. Okay, Dari. So is this Dari person who he claims to be, or is there some Dario? Got it. Or is Dario hiding or concealing in some way who he really is? Okay. Well, I think I've got that. So let's read for it. I think 3 cards to start at least will give us the answer we need. And welcome to anyone who might be joining. I'm Will from the Hermit's Lantern Tarot, doing some free live readings today. Take a look at the video description or the pinned chat message to see how to request a free reading. I'm also available for paid private readings for any of you who might be interested in one of those. You can see the link in the video description for information about that. You can also email me at tarot.hermit.lantern@gmail.com. Okay, here we go. We want to see, is Dario who he claims to be, or is there someone else behind his profile? First card down is the Six of Batons, followed by Six Cups, and the string ends with 2 coins. So, there is nothing that looks untoward here. There's nothing that looks tricky. Uh, there's nothing immediately that suggests Dario is not who Dario claims to be. Um, as those of you who are familiar with my reading style know this, but I'm not sure if there might be some new folks too, and I like to make sure we're all sort of on the same page. So when I read the cards, generally speaking, broadly speaking, what I'm looking for is the most spontaneous and obvious answer that comes out of the cards that show up on the table. But then I'm also always looking to see if there's something that goes sort of against the grain. So, like if things look obviously good or positive or affirmative, like they're going the way we want them to, then I note that. And then I also want to look for, is there any way of reading this that might make one think otherwise, and vice versa, right? So if we get all tower and swords, for example, is there any way we could read that in a way that might shed some positive light on it, right? And so seeing these cards come up, this looks like Dario is someone who's putting in some effort to move things along in a positive direction, right? In a way that would um, potentially make some progress towards some kind of connection with you. I don't know what I don't know if this is a romantic thing or a business thing or whatever. And that there's a valuable exchange with the two coins, right? So there's no swords here indicating that this is someone who wants to strike at you, so to speak. We don't see the magician who would instantly make me think tricks, right? We don't even see any of the court cards that might suggest that. And so, my initial sort of obvious baseline response to the question of is Dario who he says to be, who he says he is? I think so. That's what it looks like. Now, if I want to read it against the grain and say, all right, it looks like things are okay. There are no immediate red flags here. But how could I look at these same three cards and say, is there anything at all to be suspicious of about this person? And so let's look at that because seeing the batons and the coins, especially, does suggest um, putting in work, right? With the batons, I think of work effort, expending one's energy, right? Um, in order to get some kind of valuable result. And now if what is happening between you in your exchange is some kind of conversation, discussion, interaction, a sharing of values, then great. That's how I would interpret it at the base level. The one thing I would say to watch out for is if there is anything to watch out for, and again, I'm not sure that there is, I don't think that there is, but if there is an exchange of money, if he were to ask you for money for something, I might wonder about that because if this is someone who, I read these cards from Dario's perspective because we're asking about who this person is. And so, from his perspective, he's putting in effort or putting in work, right, towards something that he will enjoy and that he'll get something valuable out of, right? And so, if the valuable thing there is this person wants to have like a conversation or share ideas with you, great. But it's also possible and you might consider being like just aware of this that his goal could be an actual exchange of like money, right? And so I think probably this is fine, but in that practice of reading from multiple angles, which I tend to find very useful and to give good results, then that would be one thing to um, keep an eye on. I don't see Gargamel here. That's as you ask in the chat. No, I don't see like an evil like mastermind or anything like that. Yeah, I see someone who's putting in effort in order to open up a pleasurable, enjoyable path through that results in rather um, a valuable exchange to the two of you, right? The one other thing that we could take with the two of coins there would be he could be of two minds about something. That sometimes with the two of coins, we can think of this in terms of duality, right? Thinking one thing, but also thinking something else, like juggling your values, juggling ideas, that kind of thing. Could be actually juggling money, but it sounds like that doesn't really fit in the context of the question. Uh, And so there could be, on his part, a little bit of like he's not 100% sure what to make of your interactions yet, right? Let's look at the surprise card at the bottom of the deck because since we're asking about whether someone is who they say they are, it might be help from the bottom of the deck to see like what is the surprise, what is unexpected, what is unknown. And so it's 5 batons. And so that confirms, I think, the initial reading that I gave to these 3 cards, with 5 more about someone putting in effort towards building a relationship or a connection of some kind, and not necessarily anything untoward or, sneaky or anything like that. So I think you're okay here. I think that, always with people online, be cautious, right? I would always advise that, but there's nothing here to suggest bad intentions, um, or someone who's like out to get you or anything like. All right, and I'm just going to scroll through the chat here and see Florisol. I'm adding you to the bottom of the list. And Bella Bella, I'm adding you to the bottom of the list. And PJJ, I'm adding you to the bottom of the list. Okay. So I guess one other thing to consider, Sanja, you said in the chat something like, I think he is crazy. Um, he doesn't think that, according to the cards we see here, he doesn't think he's out to get you. He doesn't think he's trying to hide something from you. He doesn't think he doesn't think that he has any ill intentions towards you. Let's put it that way. Um, so from his perspective, right? This is from his perspective. I would just add that as another thing to consider, right? Like, because I just thought that because you put in the chat, you think he's crazy for some reason. And so, a crazy person might have ill intentions, but be completely unaware of them, right? And so I guess that's what I'm thinking, right? Like, as far as he thinks, everything is fine. Everything is um, on the up and up, so to speak. But it's also true that if he were, crazy, um, then it would be worth watching out, right? Okay, so next up on the list we have Starry Night. Great. And Starry Night has posted their question. Okay, so Starry Night has a question about their mother, and the question is, what's the best way to deal with my mother, where she leaves me alone, doesn't trash talk me, or cause any drama? If anything, be nicer if I have to deal with her, which I don't. She's a narcissist. Okay, so let's shuffle. And welcome to anyone who might be joining. My name is Will from the Hermit's Lantern Tarot. And I'm doing some free live readings today. You can look at the description, the video description, or the pinned chat message for information about how to request a free reading. I am also available for paid private readings. If you might be interested in that, you can check out the link tree in the description of the video for more information. You can also reach me via email at tarot.hermit.lantern@gmail.com. All right, so for Starry Night, what's the best way to deal with my mother where she leaves me alone, doesn't trash talk me, or cause any drama? Okay, here we go for Starry Night. Four cups, the Empress, hmm, the Emperor. What a fitting spread for a question about familial relations. So, the first question I have is, at the moment, is there any, well, let's say a father figure of some kind? You're asking about your mother. And so, um, you know, is there, I'm trying to determine prior to making any claims who the emperor could be, right? Uh, and so, like, if there is currently some sort of father figure, emperor kind of figure in the situation, then that would play. There sounds like there is from Starry Night. Okay, all right. So you said in your question you want to know how to deal with your mother, or like, ooh, that was the word used, deal with your mother, right? So that she leaves you alone, doesn't trash talk you, and doesn't cause drama. And it looks like the answer to your question is going to involve the emperor, right? So, how do you reach a situation in which um, the family life is, shall we say, stable, secure, structured, right? That's our Four of Cups situation. That happens when the Empress and the Emperor are facing one another, for one, right? So I think that in order for you to sort of deal with your mother, so to speak, your father or whoever this father figure person would need to get involved. That's how I would read this. And so, uh, one thing that springs up in looking at the images on the cards is the way in which this emblem of the bird, the queen holds it on her lap, right? Or the empress rather holds it up here on her lap. And um and then in the next image, the king sits on it, right? There's this um lowering tone in which the thing that the empress holds on her lap, and she's holding it rather tightly. You can see the way that with her hand here, she's like hanging on to it. Um, he doesn't have to hold on to it. He just sort of sits on it. And so I'm thinking of this, of the way in which your mother, because as you can probably tell, I'm reading the Empress here as the mother figure, right? Often in, especially esoteric readings, the Empress is described as the mother of the tarot deck, right? And so you're asking a question about your mother. And so here it's clear to me that we have a mother and a father involved in the situation. And so the whatever this, thing is that your mother is hanging on to so tightly, the emperor, the father figure, is able to sort of get it out of her hands and sit on it, right? And so I guess what I'm getting at is the way in which, while both the empress and the emperor rule and command and have power, the answer to your question, I think, given the context you're saying about how your mother's narcissistic and she causes drama and all of this, is the father needs to get it out of her hands and like um, take power over it, right? So that's what I, I would suggest to you based on what I see here with the cards is that um, if you want her to kind of leave you alone, um, we could read this as you being represented by the emblem. You want her to leave you alone. Here she's not. She's got you wrapped up in her arms, right? And so the solution is for you to get under or behind the father figure, right? And so if he won't do anything, then you've got a problem, right? If you're saying that the father figure will not um, be the emperor, so to speak, then you might be in trouble. So, one possibility here would be to say, um, get him to, right? Find a way to get him um, to do something, right? Because I think the cards are suggesting that she's sort of got her hands on you because he's letting it happen or because she overpowers him. And so there's a hello, agent number 9, and hello to other folks who've joined too. Let's see. Jenna, welcome. I'll update the list in a little bit. Um, so I'll tell you, obviously, everyone reads the cards differently, and there's no one right way to do it. Although I do think that having some kind of system at the outset and sticking to that system is important because readers run into trouble, I think, when, in the middle of a reading, they're like, "Oh, no, well, even though I decided in advance that it's like this, I guess it's not like this, it's actually like that instead." And then things get really wishy-washy and you lose precision. That's what I think. And so when I read the cards, uh, with larger spreads, I will select predetermined significators. With smaller spreads, like I'm doing today, I don't select significators beforehand. I just like to see like what it is that comes up. And then based on the context of the question and the cards that comes up, I will figure out who is who, right? Which person is which. And I do it based on um, culturally recognized functions of what we see depicted in the cards. That's how I read, and that's how I've been taught to read, and so that's what works with me. And so, and that's not to belittle how anyone else might read, because there are a lot of excellent readers, far better than me, who do things differently than me, but still get really good, excellent results, right? And so, I'm not here to pick on how other people read. But so all of that is to say, I don't know that I would say that it's you who needs to be the emperor. I mean, maybe, right? If you can see yourself, and I'm talking to Starry Night, if you can see yourself as being the emperor in the face of your mother, then maybe that makes sense, right? And obviously I don't know you and we've never met, and so I don't know if you are an emperor type or could see yourself as an emperor type. Um, if you can, then give that a try, right? And then we might say like in the situation where it sounds like if your father won't stand up to her, then you have to sort of become the father and stand up to her, right? Um, that's possible. But if you are thinking like, how can I occupy the space of a father figure in relation to another parent, if that like doesn't seem within the realm of possibility, then I think the cards are pointing here to um, a problem that concerns both of the parents, right? Maybe the symptom is showing up in your mother's behavior towards you, but I think the cards are suggesting it's not just about her, even though it comes out and it's most visible in her behavior towards you, but it involves both of them, right? Like it takes two to tango, and so um, that might be something to consider. But this is a really apt spread of cards when you're asking about family dynamics. And we get 4 of cups, which represents the family or the home or the house. Also, the ace of cups can represent those things sometimes. But, you know, the house has 4 walls, we have 4 cups, and so we're talking about a family, right? And within that family, there's an empress and an emperor, a mother and a father, right? And so the question of, um, how can you deal with her? The way to deal with her is to make sure there is an emperor and that she and that emperor are making eye contact, so to speak, right? Like the solution to them lies not just in um, dealing with the empress, the mother. It requires dealing with the emperor as well. And I do think that's something that happens in a lot of family dynamic questions where you're like, there's a problem with this one person. But then if you zoom out, right, you might realize that it's actually an entire dynamic of relationships where, sure, there's a bigger issue and a more immediate problem with that one specific person, but out that that issue is caused by a wider dynamic of relationships that involve more than just that one person. And that suggests to me what these cards are pointing at. Yeah, she's running the show at the moment. Yeah. So, like, it's as though the someone needs to take her emblem from her, right? If we think of the eagle, this is we can interpret this in a number of different ways. We could think of this as like, this is how she gets her power, right? Her shield with her emblem on it is how one of the ways that she is recognized as having power, right? And if we read left to right, which I do, unless I have a really good reason not to, um, instead of her holding the power, the shield up here, left to right, it moves down, and the emperor has got it now. And it's also possible, that I don't like it when the cards do this, but they do sometimes say, "Here's the solution to your problem," and you say, "But I can't do that." And it's like, "Well, I didn't say I'd give you a solution that was reasonable or practical, but I did say I would show you how to fix it," right? And so, that's happened to me before too, where I say, "How do I fix this?" And the cards are like, "Do this impossible thing." And I'm like, "Oh, so I can't? Is that the idea? Like, you want me to move a mountain and I can't move a mountain, so I guess I have to deal with things, like, put up with it, you know?" Alright, so let's look through here at the list. Okay, Jenna, I'm adding you to the bottom of the list. And that damn OJ, I'm adding you to the bottom of the list. And Litomi, I'm adding you to the bottom. Okay. All right. I think that's where we're at. So that will bring us to Priscilla as the next on the list. Priscilla. Thanks, Priscilla. I sure do try. I like to hear that feedback. I will say, of course, I want to be accurate and I do my best to be accurate. Um, I've gotten it wrong before, you know. Um, there are readings I have done for myself where, I do the reading and I keep a very extensive journal, a tarot journal. This is my current tarot journal. I don't want to hold it open too long in case people pause and try to read it. But I keep a very extensive tarot journal, and I mean, I have a whole shelf of them up here. But that's the current one. It's almost done, and I get things wrong. I'll do a reading, I'll make a prediction, and then reflect on it the next day or later, and I'll have to reread the cards and say, now why did I get it wrong? And I learn from that. I will say though, I also often get it right. I was very proud. I predicted accurately predicted the winner of the Super Bowl was going to be the Seahawks. That was a couple of weeks ago, I think, in a live stream. It was on Super Bowl Sunday. I had a live stream before the game started, And the very first reading I did on that live stream was about who would win. And I got that right. So, all right. So, yes, Sarah Sam, you are on the list. And Priscilla, if you would like to post your question, you are welcome to do that. And welcome to anyone who might be joining. I'm Will from the Hermit's Lantern Tarot, and I'm doing some free live readings today. Check out the video description or the pinned chat message for information about how to request a reading. I'm also available for paid private readings if that interests you, and you can check out the link tree in the description of the video for more information. And you can also email me at tarot.hermit.lantern@gmail.com. Okay, I scrolled up and I think I see Priscilla's question here. And it's a love question. And so it's um, as I'm on my own since too long, if tarot suggests something interesting about that. Okay, so it's kind of a general love question, like you're single and you want to know um, when that might change or something like that. Or maybe what you could do to invite love into your life, that kind of thing. Okay, let's see. Okay. 10 coins. 8 batons. 2 swords. So I think that there's an indication here that there may be some overthinking going on and perhaps too much emphasis on work. I don't know if you work at the moment, but if it's not actually work, it could be study or however it is that you are practically devoting your energy, right? Like the the way that you're like the quote unquote work that you're doing in your ordinary life, right? And that the combination of those 2 things is causing you some trouble, let's put it that way, right? Pinching you a little bit, closing things off a bit, right? And so with the 10 of, coins, it's like there is as much value here as anybody could possibly want. And what's being done with it? How are you investing yourself, right? And um, you're doing it in practical ways, right? With the 8 of batons, it's like you're adding your value to your workplace. You're adding your value to. It can also be friendships or social relationships as opposed to romantic, sort of like deeper emotional kinds of relationships. And so that's why you're feeling a little bit of this pinch of like, why am I single? Why don't I have a partner? That kind of thing. Uh, and so I think it's a question of redirecting how you're investing yourself, your energy, your time, your resources, right? Because this is suggesting they're all getting all your coins, all your resources, all your assets, all your means are being invested uh, in work and or social relationships, and that's leaving you with a remainder that hurts a little bit. That's kind of uncomfortable, right? And so, I look at the way that we're starting with the number 10, 10 coins, and then we've got 8 and 2, which add up to 10, right? And so it's like your 10 coins, 8 of them, the vast majority of them are getting invested in work. And then what's left over um, makes you feel kind of conflicted, right? And so I that's there's a description here of what's happening, but I think there's also a prescription of like, well, what could you do about it? And I think the answer would be to um, like invest less in work and invest more somewhere else, right? Where you might be more inclined to develop one of these um, cups kind of relationships, a romantic, a partnership, right? That kind of thing. Um, so that's the answer I'd give. There's a question of where are you focusing your energy, and if it's all going into work, then that's what you're going to get, right? Um, and your um, if you want a different result, then you'd want to invest your time, energy, resources, all of that um, outside of work, right? Yeah. So Priscilla says, focusing on career more than relationship. That makes sense. All of your energy is being focused on building for work, career, and that leaves you feeling conflicted, stuck. You're left with a couple of swords instead of cups or something like that, right? Yeah, so I think it's just a question of like redirecting. There's so much here with the coins. It's like you have so much value to offer. But if it's all going in one channel, or if almost all of it's going in one channel, then it's not getting to that special someone who it sounds like you're hoping to meet. Okay, welcome to anyone who might be joining. I'm Will from the Hermit's Lantern Tarot. doing some free live readings today. Take a look at the video description or the pinned chat message for information about how to request a reading. Next up, we have Sarah Som. All right, and we have the question from Sarah. So Sarah wants to know, what are Zine's real intentions towards Bushra? Okay, here we go. First card, 5 cups, 4 cups, 6 cups. Well, this is all lovely to see. Cups, cups, and more cups. So, real intentions. This is someone who, let's see, Zine, right? Wasn't it Zine? Um, wants um, a fulfilling, pleasurable connection with Bushra. That's how I'd read this: cups, cups, and cups. And then we can look at the individual cards. I tend to I tend to avoid as much as possible reading cards individually. That is a challenge because, like many readers, I come from um, a Rider Waite Smith background, and I love the Rider Waite Smith. I'm not dissing it. Don't get me wrong, but I find that I get better results with pip decks and Marseille style decks and that kind of thing. Um, I tend to read visually below, as opposed to this card goes here and means that, and that card goes there and means another thing, and so on. And so, with the movement 5 4 6, right? We've got one cup in the middle that sort of seems to disappear, but then it comes back again and it's joined with a second cup. And so, while there's, generally speaking, very much a sense of wanting to have a pleasurable, fulfilling connection, right? There might be a little bit of modulation or ups and downs, we could say, in this person's intentions or attitude towards Bushra, right? And so we might think about the way that, with the one cup that stands out in the first card and then it kind of disappears. It's like the heart is there, but then it might sort of flicker away, but then it comes back twice as strong. We could put it like that. There's from the 5 to 4 to the 6, we could also think, um, if it starts off at like a moderate level, then it goes down and becomes stable where maybe nothing seems to change, but then it goes up again, right? And it moves forward again. So there's a little bit of up and down going on, but very little. It's in terms of degrees rather than like quality. The quality is all about the heart, right? The quality is all about, well, love. Let's put it that way. Um, but there may be little modulations, and at times, um, something that was there might go away, but it comes back, and it comes back stronger than it was from before, if that makes sense, right? Um, so the card I think here that I would wanna put the biggest emphasis on is the last card, and I say that because I think we're certainly talking about some kind of relationship. I think it's probably a romantic kind of relationship, and so with the 6, I think of that as, the path of love, right? When we're reading pip decks, we can use metaphors to make, allusions to how things look, right? And so the cups here on the 6 are set up in two columns that we could think of sort of like a pathway, right? Like legs walking, feet walking on a path. And so seeing the 6 of cups at the end of this spread suggests wanting a continuity of the relationship over time, something that would last, right? As opposed to disappear, go away. Yeah. Um, to go back to what I said at the beginning of the stream today about wanting to read against the grain and trying to see all spreads from multiple angles. If everything looks really good, I'm going to try to see what's the one thing that maybe stands out as being a rough spot, and then vice versa. And so, when we're asking about love relationship, and we get all heart or cups, right? Hearts or cups. That's great, right? So then we want to say, what's the catch, right? There's got to be something. Where's the tension? There has to be some kind of tension here. Otherwise, it's not interesting, right? So I'm always looking for where that tension is, even if it's not immediately available. If we had the tower in here somewhere, then we know where the tension is. But when we're doing a relationship reading and we get all cups, where is the tension, right? We need to find that. And so there's two places that I could locate where there might be some tension in this person's intentions towards Bushra, right? And so one would be the way that this cup flickers out, disappears. The center cup is there and then it's gone, but then it comes back. And so there's some of that modulation. But the other thing that I hadn't mentioned yet is when you've got nothing but cups, where does the law and order, where does the effort come from? Right? There's the tricky spot. Um, a partner, a relationship that is all fancy, good times and cups and drinks and pleasure and love, that sounds great. But in reality, at some point, something has to be done that looks more like work, right? A sacrifice needs to be made. Um, a choice might need to be made. There's some kind of transaction or investment that has to happen, right? And so, one other issue I could potentially see with this person is maybe they're kind of interested in pleasure and love and fulfillment and good times. This may not be someone who knows how or who is prepared to do things like make a sacrifice or work or put energy into it. This cups is more like someone who's gonna go with the flow as long as it feels good. And that's great as long as it feels good. But if suddenly it's like, "Hey, I need you to do this thing for me that I'm pretty sure you don't wanna do, and it's really important." There's no indication here that this person is ready to do that. Now, I'm not saying they're not because we didn't specifically ask that question, and so I'm making, inferences based on the cards that come up. But that would be something to consider, right? Like, um, in terms of their intentions, I think their intentions are all very good. But they might also be someone who wants to go with the flow and who is happy so long as things feel good. But when it comes down to making a sacrifice or making a decision or something like that, they may not be uh, prepared to do that. That would be the one thing to look out for. Uh, but in terms strictly to answer the question you asked about their intentions, I think the intentions are certainly all good. And I just have to shout out Agent Number Nine's mention of Vincent Petisci's um, excellent videos on YouTube. That if anyone is interested in, well, in the tarot generally, but particularly if you like Marseille or Pip decks, I can recommend. Patishi has a lot of really fantastic teachings. The late, I should say, the late Vincent Patishi. All right, so I believe Flora Soul is next. And I am adding Ari. Ari, such a lover girl. I believe requested to be added to the list. Okay. So, Florisol asks, how did Aberdeen feel about my absence? Okay. How did Abedin feel about Florisol's absence? 2 batons, the emperor, 5 coins. Okay, let's see. Um, because we're seeing batons and coins here, uh, okay, let's start with the person. The emperor, right? And so I'm reading based on the question. We're reading from Abedin's perspective, right? And so this is Abedin uh, showing up and looking at the 2 batons, like perhaps expecting that the 2 of you were going to work on something together, build something together, right? Like he's there ready to lay his baton down and then expecting you to lay yours down too, or hoping that you would be there to lay yours down too. And then you weren't. And so one way of reading the 5 coins would be to say that, well, then um, he had to go ahead and um, figure things out for himself. That might be one way of putting it, right? And so I think that he likely um, isn't too terribly upset in your absence because he still got something that he was hoping to get, if that makes sense. And we're speaking or I'm speaking in really practical kind of terms because, um, if anything, when I say practical, I mean as opposed to like emotional. And the reason I say that is um, with the 5 coins, it's like perhaps his mind was upset, destabilized by it, but he's showing up here as the emperor, which is someone who, generalizing, who isn't necessarily super in touch with their feelings. This isn't the King of Cups, for example. And so, I don't know anything about you or this person, although I may have read about this person before, but I don't know them in any personal sense. But this suggests someone who is affected by it in a intellectual kind of way. Their mind is affected by it, not necessarily their feelings. And the reason I say that is because you asked specifically, how did he feel, right, about it? And I don't know that he would describe it as having felt a whole lot of anything. I think he would say he thought about it, right? It was on his mind, so to speak. Like there was the fact of your absence stuck in his mind, right? As an odd element out, the fifth that destabilizes the four. Uh, but how did he feel about it? It's more like he thought, like, why weren't you there for us to collaborate together? And I say collaborate because of the 2 batons, right? Another way of putting it might be to say something like, um, when you weren't there, um, we couldn't build anything of the relationship, right? So this seems like someone who's thinking very practically about things and about your absence, right? It's like when you weren't there. no progress was made on our relationship. And while I don't think this person felt something super deeply, they thought like there was a change in their mind, so to speak. There was a coming to terms with, or an attempt to come to terms with, how your absence made things unstable for them in terms of their um, how they're thinking about things. Another possible reading or another possible thing to add, which may or may not apply. And so I guess I'll just add for those of you who might be interested, not just in getting answers to questions, but who might read the cards for yourselves. Um, that so there are a lot of sort of traditional fortune tellers, um, quote unquote, meanings for the cards, and I'm aware of those, and sometimes I use them, but I usually use them as an afterthought because I don't find them to be super accurate. But one of them would be, 5 of coins can be food, like meals, like eating, that kind of thing. And so it could, if there's any context in which, like, he's realizing that he had to eat alone, right? Like, that could be something that sort of, um, um, preoccupied him a little, right? Like, he'd expected that the 2 of you would, um, like, cooperate together on something, and then he ended up having to eat alone, that kind of thing. Okay, welcome to anyone who might be joining. I'm Will from the Hermit's Lantern Tarot. And so I've added blessings to the bottom of the list. And Jenna, I've got you as number 8 on my list. So I've got you on there. All right. So that was Flora Soul's reading. And so next on my list is Bella Bella. You're welcome, Jenna. Okay. Okay, so Bella Bella asks, next step of my crush A towards B, no contact. All right. So Bella Bella wants to know, what is this person A going to do next with regards to B, who I think is her, who is Bella Bella. So it sounds like this is someone you have a crush on that you're not dating and haven't dated, but you're wondering, like, are they gonna do something to get closer to you or not? Okay. Okay. Here we go for Bella Bella. First card down. 10 coins. 3 swords. 2 swords. So there's a pretty quick movement from 10 to 3. And we start off with all of this great value with the 10 coins. And then fairly quickly it goes to those things that poke us, swords, right? Uh, and so and then from the 3 just down to the 2, although we do notice looking at, what we see visually, there is a way in which the little flower or foliage in the middle of the 10 of coins is blocked by a sword, but still manages to sort of grow. And then when the center sword disappears, we have a pretty big flower here, a very large flower, in fact, but it is surrounded by swords, scimitars, or like a fence or a wall is up around it, right? And so the question you asked is, what is this crush going to do next? What is their next step towards you? And so I think that there's likely a lot of overthinking that's happening with the tens, especially the 10 of coins. There's a sense of like, what am I going to do with all of this? Right? There could not be more coins on any card, right? And so it's like there's almost too many. And so what am I going to do with all of this? Right? And so quickly 10 to 7, or excuse me, 10 to 3, that's a difference of 7. It's fast, right? Um, it's like cut it out, right? And then slow movement from 3 to 2, something starts to grow in the space that had been cut earlier. And so to translate this into terms that might fit better with your question, uh, I don't think that from your perspective, I don't know that you're going to see this person take any specific step next. I think it's happening inside, if that makes sense, like inside of them, so to speak. Um, the the thoughts they're having, the value that they see in a potential connection with you is very quickly like cut out. And I don't know what the context for that could be for why it might be happening, but that doesn't mean it disappears. It grows, but it grows in a space where it's like buried. It's like hidden away, right? So I think that there's like a lot of um, hidden away or underground or not visible kind of action taking place as opposed to um, seeing like, oh, having a clear outward kind of development. Okay, he's married. Ah, well, there's the context. Yeah. So, in that case, adding that context to it, um, I mean, it could actually be too that money is a concern. We often read coins um, metaphorically to represent resources, values, that kind of thing. Sometimes ideas, but they can also mean money, right? And so, if he's married, it could be that there's there's cash on the line in the sense that if there's an infidelity that could initiate, like, I don't know, a divorce or something, then he could stand to be in some pretty serious financial trouble. I can't help but think of that when I see the coins on the table in that kind of situation. And so, in that kind of situation, we could think of swords as what you do. You fight with swords, and you also defend yourself with swords. And so, it could be that he's having to actively fight with that center sword. It's an odd number of three, and so it's active. Actively fight to um, defend whatever his resources or values are, or money, and also so fight to keep them, and then also with the even number two, defend, right? Because the even numbers I would think of as being more the defensive side of the swords as opposed to the active stabbing side of the swords, right? Um, so I think there's likely a sense of needing to protect um, everything he's got right now, and that is playing into his, well, I think it's kind of his not, outwardly acting, at the moment. Okay, and welcome to anyone who might be joining. I'm Will from the Hermit's Lantern Tarot. I've recently started offering paid private readings, and if that interests anyone, you can check out the link tree in the description of the video for more information. You're also welcome to inquire via email at tarot.hermit.lantern@gmail.com. And you're welcome, Bella Bella. Okay, so the list, we're on number 7. PJJ is next on the list. PJJ. Okay, and we have a question from PJJ Prob about a work situation. And the question is, why did my manager, Richard, teach the other guy how to order stuff and not me, considering it was me who he first was willing to teach and not the other guy? So it's as though your manager suggested to you that you were going to have this new responsibility, but then the manager went ahead and taught and then I assume gave that responsibility to this other guy, and you wanna know why did the manager do that? Okay, let's see. Why did the manager teach the other guy instead of you? Okay, first card down is the 8 of Cups, followed by 5 coins, followed by 3 batons. Okay. Is there any way, any possibility that the manager and this other person know each other in like socially, like they hang out together or go to lunch together or anything like that? No. Okay. So I'm trying to think of how to say what I think I'm going to say. Okay. The Let's look at the cards one at a time because I think the last card has the answer, but we'll build up to it. So, um, the 8 of Cups suggests a feeling of like good atmosphere, like fun times had. And that's why I thought, is there any way in which they might like, if these guys are like partying together or something, that might help to explain it. But it sounds like that's not the case. And so, uh, with the eights, we can think not just of people having a good time together, but with the eights, I tend to read them as thoughts, hopes, or fears. And so with the cups, I would read it as usually, mostly hopes, unless I have a good reason to go otherwise. And so um, there's a sense that he's was thinking, because we asked in the past, why did he do it? That he, the manager, was thinking, it'll kind of just be easy. Like, there's a or at least a hope that it would just be kind of go with the flow kind of thing, right? With cups, I think often of going with the flow, uh, and that he will get the results he wants. 5 coins, get his hands, 5 fingers, 5 coins, get his hands on the result, the final outcome of having taught this new thing to someone, and that it ends up being not very much work. And so, one as I was shuffling prior to laying out these cards, I thought, "Oh, well, maybe the manager, like, doesn't like you or has it out for you or, is trying to stab you in the back or something." And I was anticipating, like, well, if I there are certain cards that if I see that, that's the reading I'll give, but of course, I wanna read the actual cards and not just make things up based on whatever I wanna say. But I don't think that's what it is, right? I don't see anything here to suggest that there's not a sense of maliciousness. There's no sense of like, "Oh, we gotta get rid of her." I think it's more like it was convenient, it was easy, right place at the right time. It for whatever the circumstance was, I think that the manager just was like, I can more easily teach this other person than I can teach Prob. And so I think the manager just kind of like took the easy way out, rather than do the thing that, at least implicitly, he had suggested he would do. Right? It's like there's all these people and they're hanging around and the other guy just happens to be there, the 2 cups in the center, and so he can accomplish his task, right? Like, check the thing off his to-do list, get the result he needs, and with only 3 batons of work spent, and 3 isn't that much, right? 3 is just, if we think of 4 as, like, the minimum, like, to keep things stable, it's like, well, this is easy, like, I can do less work than I had anticipated if I just teach this guy now than if I do what I said or implied I was gonna do and teach Prob later. I think it was that kind of thing. Okay, so yeah. So you were working at that time, like, you were doing some other task at work, you had some other responsibility at work and were unavailable to be taught, but this other guy, even though the manager made it look like he was gonna teach you, and even though this other guy had been on vacation while you were working, like, the guy was just there, and so the manager was like, "Ugh, I can just teach this guy, and I can say I did my job while doing less work, and that's easier." And so I think that's what it was. He was just like, "How can I make things as easy as possible on myself?" And an opportunity arose, and he took it. I don't know that I'd say he thinks you are necessarily difficult to work with, although that is a question we could, I think I'd want to do another reading for that and specifically ask that, as opposed to interpret cards from another question. Because I wouldn't specifically say that for certain. It's possible, uh, but this says more to me. It's less in the moment. It was less about thinking you're difficult to work with and more about thinking from the manager's perspective, how can I easily accomplish this task with as little effort as possible? and And he decided the answer to that question was to teach the other person. And welcome to anyone who might be joining. I am Will from the Hermit's Lantern Tarot, doing some free live readings today. I am also available for paid private readings for those of you who might be interested in that. And you can take a look at the link tree in the description of the video or email me at tarot.hermit.lantern@gmail.com. And so next on the list, we have Jenna. And Prob, I can understand why you'd be upset about it. I think I would too. Um, I don't think it was out of maliciousness, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have an effect that feels bad. And also, I think it probably reveals something about the character of this manager, who is perhaps, at least in this instance, more interested in making things easy on himself than on doing the right thing, if I could put it like that. All right, so Jenna's question is, what will happen in March with my connection, Zach? Okay, let's see. For Jenna, what will happen in March with Jenna's connection with Zach? The Tower, the Chariot, and Four Swords. Oh boy. So I don't know. Okay, let's read this chat. Jenna says, Zach and I are consistently seeing each other every weekend, and we're physically exclusive and emotionally and romantically focused on each other, but we're just not officially boyfriend girlfriend yet. Okay. So let's describe, let me describe what I see. First, the tower. Uh, the structure gets hit by lightning or some of this very colorful rainbow fire. The top gets knocked off, and the people inside, the two people, um, fall out of it, right? Come out of it. And so it's not always like a quote unquote bad card. I don't think there are all good or all bad cards, but it does certainly indicate, at the minimum, an upheaval, a disruption, um, things. It can mean things kind of falling apart or a falling out, that kind of thing. Things are going to get shaken up in some way. Uh, in the most mundane sense, the tower can just mean a great, well, I used the word upheaval before, right? Like cut everything, every pattern or the structure that you have set up gets torn down, and that does mean then there's the possibility to create something new, right? Um, in the most mundane sense, this could just mean like if you're seeing each other every weekend, that that pattern, right? Those bricks that you have stacked up, that changes, right? So that there's a big disruption, so to speak, to that structure gets knocked away. Okay. Oh, you say, oh, okay, you're going to India for 9 days. Okay. Oh, okay. Cool. So, that's cool. I'm jealous. Enjoy your time in India. I hope to hear about it when you get back. Okay. So that brings me to the chariot, which uh, can indicate someone coming or someone going. And given that you're going to be traveling, it suggests to me someone going, right? Someone like, I'm out of here, right? Taking off, traveling away. And so um, the upheaval of your leaving temporarily, I know you said, um, but I do think that is going to be felt as a disruption, right? And so it sounds like what you're saying in the chat is that, like, this is planned in advance, it's all set up, it's not a surprise, he knows about it, all of that. But I think nonetheless, there may be a feeling of like, um, a little, maybe a little bit of being left behind, a little bit of, um, feeling like that what you had built together is um, less structured than it was before, right? At least temporarily. You did put you built into your question a time frame, and I love that because it helps for specificity. So we're just talking about in that month of March, and it's suggesting things feeling really shaky, um, and you're driving off, right? And anytime I see the chariot or the charioteer, um, I always ask myself, is this person coming or going? If they're coming, are they going to stay? If they're leaving, are they gonna come back? And so he might have some of those thoughts about like, gosh, she's going away for 9 days. Is she coming back? Not literally, because of course you're coming back literally, but in terms of the connection with him, there might be some feeling of like, is she coming back to me? Right? That kind of thing. And so then that brings us to the four swords, which does suggest, um, on the one hand, it might hurt a little, your being gone, because now I'm reading you as the charioteer, given that you said, with the context that you're going out of the country. And so, not that you're trying to hurt him, and I'm sure he knows that, but he still might feel a loss, at your absence. And, well, I guess I think absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? And so, um, even in the pain of the Four of Swords, there is the beautiful flower inside that remains and that grows. Um, I can't help too but notice the way in which in the previous two cards there are no flowers, but there's grass, there's like foliage, right? And so from that fertile ground, a flower grows. So I think he's going to miss you, is a way to put that. He's gonna. Although I imagine he'll be happy that you get to experience this trip. I mean, I'm happy for you. That's awesome. But I think he's also going to feel sad about it, feel a little hurt by it, feel, it's going to pinch him at least a little bit. Um, and the other thing that I could add with the Four of Swords specifically ending the string, and we see this particularly in the Rider Waite Smith version of the card, where there's sometimes it's known as the rest card, or like it's time to take a break, or like lay down, or that kind of thing. Um, it's almost like there could be a feeling that the relationship has to take a nap, so to speak. Like, not that it's ending necessarily, nothing like that, but that it's, while you're gone, it's almost like a little rest, right? But in a way that, while it may, allow for, some growth in the way I talked about earlier with the flower growing, um, also is kind of uncomfortable, He's gonna miss you. I think that's the best way to put it. Another way that I'm just looking at the images to see the other thing that I will say is, so we have two people on the tower card, which must represent you and him, right? One of them gets in the chariot and goes off. That's you. And so where is the other one? Well, the other one is maybe here, the flower, right? And so we could say there's a sense of his feeling, um, restricted, or like behind a fence, or a little locked up, that kind of thing, like as he waits for you to come back, um, from your trip. Oh, I just renewed my passport the other day too. And when you, I mean, I'm in the US, so I don't know how it might work in other countries if people are elsewhere, but, as soon as you initiate a passport application for renewal, your current passport immediately becomes invalidated. So, like, as you're waiting for it to be approved, you cannot travel outside the country. So you have to plan it for a time when you will not need to leave the country. As I was doing this, I wondered, what happens if, like, suddenly I had to? Um, like, what if, I don't know, I have a cousin in Toronto. What if I suddenly had to go to Canada, you know? And my passport application is sort of in limbo, like, what would happen? I don't know what would happen, but, maybe there are emergency circumstances you can get around it, but officially, it's like once you put that application in, I think they say 4 to 6 weeks, and in the meantime, you cannot leave the country. Well, Jen, I hope you have a fantastic time in India. Oh, that's true for Canada. You can use the enhanced license or the Real ID. I think you can use that. But I don't know. What if I had to go to Mexico or I don't know. I'm just making things up at this point. But um, I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time, Jenna. That's really cool. You'll have to tell us about it when you get back. Yeah. Will your March be okay? I mean, this is going to be kind of a test, I think. Um, right. Like, it, whenever you see the tower card, it means, well, it can mean any number. The cards don't mean anything. So it's always depends on the context, right? But when we look at the image of the tower card, this is not a particularly pleasant image, right? The people are upside down and things are falling and there's fire and this is loud and a little scary and there's a lot going on. This is not comfortable. And then someone leaves, right? Takes off, and so that the other person is left to kind of grow on their own temporarily, right? And so um, I, you know, it's not like all hearts and rainbows, right? I think that this, you said it's. I think you said it's kind of a new um, connection, like you're exclusive, but it hasn't been something that's lasted for a very, very long time, and so your leaving, I think, will be a challenge, right? But not a disaster. And I say that because I would prefer to see the tower on the left side rather than over here. Yes? Because I read left to right unless I have a really good reason not to, and here I don't have a reason to read it otherwise. And so, if the tower were at the end, I'd think it ends in disaster. But instead, seeing the tower at the beginning of the spread, it's more like the quote unquote disaster happens, and then you like ride through it, right? You ride through it, and maybe there's a period of restrictions put on the relationship. Um, but from the context of the question, these will be temporary, right? As opposed to you're going along and suddenly, bam, everything explodes at the end. So, I think there's reason to be hopeful, but I would not discount that this is, the absence, while it may make the heart grow fonder, as I suggested earlier, um, could be a strain, on a newer um, relationship. Yeah. Yeah, I think booking things together for, like, as soon as you get home is a really good idea because it suggests continuity, right? Like, even though there will be this upheaval of your leaving, you have plans together, like, locked in plans for when you get back. That's a really good idea. Okay, so next up, That Damn OJ. That Damn OJ. All right, and we have the question from That Damn OJ. Hello. Will Abby and I get back together? That is the question. Let's see. And welcome to anyone who might be joining. I'm Will from the Hermit's Lantern Tarot. I've been doing some free live readings today. I'm also available for paid private readings for those of you who might be interested. Check out the link tree in the description of the video or shoot me an email at tarot.hermit.lantern@gmail.com. All right, so the question from That Damn OJ is, will Abby and I get back together? Okay, let's see. Two batons, two cups, and the sun. Well, this looks pretty clearly to me like a yes. Let me just look at it a moment. So I would phrase I would phrase the answer to your question in kind of a conditional way with a suggestion that it's likely to be an affirmative answer, yes. And I say that particularly because of the final card, which for me, reading the Tarot de Marseille, uh, if the card you really want in a romantic relationship is the Sun card as opposed to the Lovers. Because with the Lovers, there are three human figures, plus there's Cupid up there. It's much more about choice, ambivalence, hesitation, waiting to get an impulse to do something, and like you're not really sure what to do. With the Lovers, you've got two people on equal footing out in the sun. Everything's clear. It's warm. They're protected by that wall in the background, like, and it's just the two of them, right? And so, seeing the sun card at the end of a line of cards, asking about a relationship is quite optimistic. But I would still phrase my answer conditionally. And so here's how I'd put it. If the two of you can work together, that's number one. With batons, I think of work and putting in effort. So if each of you can lay down your baton, so to speak, you both are contributing, not just one of you putting it all in and the other one's accepting or taking, but both of you are cooperating. If you can cooperate, then there can be a fulfilling exchange, right? The effort you put in can turn into emotional depth, right? So that the work you're putting in becomes something you can share with one another. Then the sun will come out and you'll have a symmetrical relationship where the two of you see eye to eye and there are no secrets and everything is out and bright and and all of that stuff. Um, so in a sense, phrasing it that way answers your question with a question, right? Because you know the context for what happened and is happening between the two of you far better than I do. I know nothing about it. I just read the cards. And so if saying like that the two of you need to cooperate, if you're like, "Oh, well that's never going to happen." Well, then the answer to the question is no, right? Like, as positive as all of this is, the first thing that must happen is an equal cooperation, right? Where you are both contributing as equally as possible. There's a very clear insistence here in these three cards of 50-50, right? 2, 2, and the sun, where we have the two figures looking at each other on the bright sunny day. And so, um, if that can happen, if you can both put in effort, then I would say I think so, right? Um, it's hard to imagine a more optimistic string of cards to answer that question. With a question like, "Are we gonna get back together?" As I'm shuffling, I've gotten that question a lot, and as I'm shuffling, I'm thinking almost always the answer is no, right? Or some version of that. And so, and also it's usually not what people want to hear. And while I don't think that what I'm what I'm doing here is not trying to just tell people what they want to hear. And so I'm sort of thinking like, how do I break the news gently? And I want to be kind and compassionate and all of that. Um, but these are very positive cards. So I think um, I think there's every reason to be optimistic about that if you can envision the two of you putting in equal effort into the relationship. So, there's one other thing. Hang on just a second. I'm trying to think. There's a couple other details in the cards that are sticking out to me, and I'm trying to decide what to do with them. and they're hinging on the shield and the sun. So here's the other thing I'd add, because given how incredibly optimistic these cards are, I want to throw a wrench in it, read it against the grain, look at it awry, so to speak. And so, how does, and so if there has been any sense of defensiveness or like someone putting up a shield, so to speak, um, because they don't want to get hurt. Uh, that would be the second conditional statement, I think. On the one hand, can the two of you get back together? On the one hand, yes, if there can be a mutual cooperation. That's our two batons. But also, if the shield disappears, right? There's this shield with the three fleur de lis down here, and the shield is gone. So much so that the figures on the sun card not only are they not wearing armor, they don't have shields, they're hardly wearing clothes at all. They don't need them, right? Because they're totally vulnerable in one another's presence and comfortable with that, right? And so that's the second thing I want to add, right? If there can be mutual cooperation and whatever feeling of defensiveness that might have been there, if that can dissolve. Um, and more specifically, the way I might frame that is with the sun, we think about daytime, we think about warmth, we think about being able to see things totally clearly. And so, if there were any secrets, would be one way of putting it, but also just if there was any holding back from the other person, if one person was ever holding back from the other because they were afraid of being hurt, and so their way of defending themselves is by not revealing everything, not opening up completely, if that can go away, right? If that shield where things are not seen clearly can go away, then things will be seen clearly. There is no more defense, and then there's a mutual warm exchange. So that's the one other condition that I would add to throw a wrench in things. But to reiterate, you kind of couldn't have more optimistic cards for this question than these cards. Maybe a 10 of cups could have maybe um, in the first position, the 10 of cups, that maybe could have made it a little more. But two batons is still pretty good. Better than pretty good. Very good. Okay. So, Ari, no, I have not called you yet. Next on the list is, did I spell this right? Litomi? Litomi, followed by Ari, and then blessings. That's where we stand at the moment. Oh, and Cat Goddess requested. Let me add Cat Goddess to the bottom. Okay, so Litomi, if you'd like to post your question, you are welcome to do that. Oh, Bob Hope, I'll add Bob Hope. And so, Latomi, feel free to post your question. All right, here we go. Let's see. All right. So, Litomi asks, what kind of romantic path am I truly meant to walk in this lifetime? Solitary devotion or mutual partnership? You have a very beautiful way with words, I'll say. So, let me shuffle for that question, and then we'll pull some cards for you. Okay. What kind of romantic path am I truly meant to walk in this lifetime? Solitary devotion or mutual partnership? First card up is the 13th trump card, Death, followed by 3 cups, hmm, followed by 10 cups. I think I have an answer, but let me just look at these for a moment. So, the first thing I notice, or the first thing that I look at, um, and I think this is actually a good example of how when I'm reading the cards in the way that I've been taught to read them is not to read them in fixed positions, but to look at the images and read them as a visual text and see how elements from one card appear or move or transform from one card to the next and what happens to them. And so the first thing that drew my eye was the way in which the skeleton on the death card is holding this scythe. And I look at the color too. So I'm looking at the way the top or bottom, because it's upside down, of the scythe has this red edge to it. And so I'm seeing that transform into a cup, the sort of single cup that's a little bit it's higher than the others, but it's separated from them sort of by the foliage, right? These 2 are sort of down here together like a couple, and then there's this one up here, and so the scythe turns into this cup that is sort of around the others, but separate from it. And I'm seeing the way the color marks the edge of the scythe and also the edge of the cup. And then this cup turns on its side, gets maybe a little bit bigger, gets maybe a little more ornate. If you can see, it's a very small detail, but the cups on the 3 of cups all have the same, let's call it lid or opening, right? They're all the same. This one's maybe a little bit bigger than these 2, but they're designed very similarly. But in this card, it changes. Do you see the way that there is this more there's like a flower growing there, a flower stamped on it, a more elaborate, a more detailed, a more beautiful, design that stands out from all of the rest, right? All of these 9 cups are the same. This one is bigger and has a more elaborate, interesting, um, opening or lid or detail about it. And so I'm pointing all of that out, because I think it all goes into answering your question. Um, and the question you gave implied 2 possible answers. One being, like, are you meant to be um, with someone in a romantic partnership? Or 2, are you meant for a life of solitary devotion? I think is the way that you phrased it. And seeing, if we just think about the movement of the scythe up, the rising tone, the way it goes above everything else, above the couple, so that it can get even bigger and more interesting and more beautiful on its own, this clearly seems to be pointing to me towards that option of the solitary devotion. Because as long as this cup is solitary, um, it gets better, right? It rises, it gets bigger, um, it gets more ornate, it distinguishes itself from the others so that it's more interesting. When you look at the details, there's something different there. It's not like all of the others. And so reading those visual details on the cards, um, alongside these very specific and well articulated question that you asked, uh, leads me towards that solitary devotion answer. The other detail that I could look at is, um, when we see the death card. um, mm, there's a couple ways I could take it. So when we see the death card, it's everything gets pared down to the bones. All of the clothes are off and all of the even the skin is off, so to speak, right? We're just down to the basic structure of things, the basic and essential structure of things, right? Uh, it's like everything else falls away, and maybe the scythe even is putting a stop to, well, partnership, coupling. And I say that because of the way it's like the edge of the scythe is coming in to cut away these 2 cups, and then it also turns into the 3rd, which then turns into the 10th in the 10 of cups. That's another detail I could look at is, because with the death card, I'm always thinking, what is death cutting or cutting out, right? And, um it seems to me it's cutting out the 2 bottom cups so that the top cup can continue to rise and become more interesting and ornate and all of that kind of stuff. Um, so that would be my answer to your question based on what I see here and based on the question itself. I will also add, this has happened to me before, and so, let me see if I can articulate it. Well, number 1, nothing is nothing is not subject to change, right? And so I would always steer clear of saying, well, this is fate or this is destiny or there's nothing you can do or this is just how it is. Everything in life can change. Um, Sometimes it doesn't, right? But like everything is subject to change in our lives. And so if you don't like how things are going, you can potentially take steps to alter it. And so that's one thing. But the other thing is I have had experiences of my own with the cards where I will ask a question and get a specific answer, and it's not the answer I wanted. And because I got the answer I didn't want, something changed, which later down the line led me to an outcome that was more favorable. And so, obviously, I don't know if that's could be what's happening here. Maybe the solitary devotion um, sounds like is what you want, and that's great. That's uh, Given the way you phrase the question, I think that very well might be the case. Um, but if it's not, there is a possibility here that in getting the answer that maybe that you don't want, that something changes so that in the long run you actually do end up getting a more favorable outcome, right? In other words, another way, if we're sort of reading the cards as being a little sneaky with us in how they're giving us one answer so as to get a different outcome, it could be suggesting something like, if you cut out trying to be in a relationship and work on yourself, elevating yourself above the others so that you can become more interesting and more beautiful and more ornate and different from the rest, who knows if that might actually lead to a relationship down the line, right? It can almost be a kind of trick or like a kind of magic whereby getting one answer um, that's maybe not the one you were hoping for in a roundabout paradoxical way, later you end up somewhere you never thought you'd get to, right? The to the for the for the part about your question about mutual partnership, to give an affirmative answer to that, in other words, for me to have given an answer that said it's very clear and obvious from the cards today that you are, as you phrased it, meant to walk a path of mutual partnership. I would want to see, um, in particular, some of the people cards particularly facing one another, right? Like some of the court cards, like a king and a queen, or really any two court cards facing each other. Or if not the courts, then the people, well, like as I had in a previous reading just a minute ago, the sun card would have been a really obvious affirmative to that mutual partnership answer. Um, but that's not what came up here, right? And some of the twos also, like two of cups, that would have been another mutual partnership. Um, a card that I would immediately think mutual partnership, right? I think the Sun card is the mutual partnership card par excellence. Um, but the way in which, in particular, death is, of course, solitary. And while there are three objects on the center card, one of them is clearly standing out, and it stands out by being elevated above the others. And then one clearly stands out again on the 10 as being differentiated in interesting ways from the other cups. That very much suggests to me, the solitary devotion. So that is the answer I'd give as of these cards today. Okay. Oh, and you're very welcome. You're very welcome, Latomi. I love the way you phrased your question. Thank you for asking it. Okay, we have next Ari. If Ari is here, Ari can post her question. So if Ari is here, Ari such a lover girl, you can post your question. Okay, so Ari such a lover girl, last call for Ari. And if Ari is not here, then blessings. If blessings is here, I can read for blessings. Okay, blessings. I'll do a reading for you. You can go ahead and post your question in the chat. What's coming towards me? Okay. And so do you have any particular concern With the big areas are love, money, work, conflict with others, jobs, and money. Okay, that helps to narrow it down. All right, so let's see. Okay, let's see what we get here for blessings. What is coming towards blessings? The Magician, the Wheel of Fortune, and 8 batons. Okay, let's take a look at this. Just noticing some details. Okay, so the first thing I see is the magician, le battleur, and they're extremely capable, so capable that they're doing lots of things at once and maybe have too many things going on, as we note by the number of different items on their table. Um, and they're looking at something over here, which I'm going to want to see what the surprise card is to see what that is in a moment. But what they're not seeing is the Wheel of Fortune. So what and I say that because the magician looks to the left, and so sort of behind them, so to speak, even though it's on the right, behind them is some things are going up and some things are going down. There's a cycle happening, things are spinning, things are happening, but it's happening sort of not where you, if that wasn't clear, I'm seeing you as the magician. They're not happening where you don't have your eye on it, right? So something's going on, we might say behind the scenes, so to speak, right? And what is the result of it, or what's causing the change, and it's work. And I say that because we've got 8 batons here, and if you look at the Wheel of Fortune card, there is a handle or a lever here, right? And so something is turning the wheel. What is turning the wheel? And in this particular version of the card, the handle is on the right. And so I would look to the card to the right to answer the question, what is turning the wheel? And well, it's a work situation, right? And so with 8 batons, we can think of, um, I don't know if you're like currently employed or not. If you are currently employed, we could think of contexts in which the other people that you work with are causing changes to happen, like going through cycles, things are going up, things are going down, and you do not have control over those things, right? Because you're over here looking in this direction, and over here, I mean, the wheel indicates um, an absence of agency, right? The wheel turns, but you're not turning it, right? Okay, you say you're not employed. So in the context of you're not being employed, um, what is turning the wheel, we might say, is more like the labor market, right? That you as an individual don't have any control over. Um, and so the we could think of the job market, the labor market as like these monkeys at the circus, so to speak, right? And right now, this monkey up here, he's the king monkey, right? Because he's got a little crown on, but he's not going to stay there forever, right? The wheel's going to keep turning, and the king monkey at the top is going to lose his job, so to speak, and then another monkey will have the opportunity to rise up and take it. But the monkeys on the wheel don't control the wheel. What's controlling the wheel is the 8 of batons, right? Is the sort of the job market more generally, right? So, like, all of this stuff with the labor market is going on, and you don't have control over that, right? So that would be like the first sort of preliminary observation to make. What's coming towards you is that changes are happening in the job market, and you sort of just have to wait for them to happen. That's one thing. But I think crucially, the fact that the magician who's very capable and is maybe metaphorically like out on the street, like hustling to like get that job. And, nowadays that would be like probably sending out job applications and resumes on LinkedIn or something like that. But you can imagine back in the day, it's hundreds of years ago when the Tarot de Marseille was designed, we can imagine someone who's like on the street corner, like trying to get people's attention to like uh, get a job, right? Like trying to draw attention to themselves, improvising, working their magic, so to speak. If we use the idea of the magician here, that metaphor, working their magic to get a job. Um, but what's crucial, I think, is that the magician is looking away from the changes that are happening in the labor market. So let's look at the surprise card and see what this magician is looking at. Ah. And oh, I'm just going to move the cards because of the lighting. There's some glare. Okay. Um, and so the magician is looking at a queen of batons person. So, um, the queen of batons, I think of, she's like the woman of business, right? Or the woman of work. We could give her that name, right? She's the woman who knows how to get things done, knows how to put in effort when it is necessary, but she's wise about doing it so that she also knows when not to bother and when to rest. Um, and so this suggests like Is there someone out there in a position, she can be a boss too. So is there someone out there who is in a position to offer you a job where you're like hoping or expecting, like you're focusing your attention on this particular opportunity, we might put it. Um, and as you are doing that, maybe not paying as much attention to what's going on back here, which is that sometimes the labor market just has to go through the next cycle, um, before something changes. And that unfortunately, individuals don't have control, over that, over what that cycle looks like in any given moment. And so I guess that is the way that I'd answer the question of like, what's coming towards you at the moment? Well, it's that you need to wait for the cycle to complete so that your next opportunity comes up. But I would be careful or wary about focusing too much on one opportunity, like applying for the job that you're hoping this person could give you. Um, if behind your back, things are changing and might open up other doors, right? So, um, another way to put it would be like, cast a wide net. Don't be so focused on one opportunity that you miss others that might open up that, number 1, you would have no idea are even coming, and number 2, you have no control over when that opportunity is going to open up, right? Because you're waiting for this monkey to fall, and when that happens, which is controlled by the job market, when that happens, you better make sure that you can look over here too, and that you're not so focused on this one that you miss that other one, if that makes sense. So what's coming towards you is, a cycle happening in the labor market. That's the most, concise way of putting it. And so you need to keep your eye over there too, not just on, like, I don't know, maybe you had an interview somewhere, or maybe there's a friend who's like, "Oh, I can get you a job here." Be careful of focusing so much on that one opportunity that you won't see when the cycle completes and another one opens. Okay. All right. So, you're very welcome. Blessings. I wish you, great luck and opportunity in your job search. Next up, we have Cat Goddess. Cat Goddess, if you're here, you can post your question in the chat. All right. And Cat Goddess asks, what does the month ahead potentially have in store for my loved ones and I? Okay. Page of Swords. Justice. Three coins. Okay, so you said in your question you referred to your loved ones and yourself. When seeing this page of swords come up, pages can be young people. They can also be messages, and so um, if it's a message, then with the Page of Swords, it tends to be like a troubling message, and like a message that might upset somebody. Um, and so that's one way to read that first card. It could also have to do with a young person who's maybe a little troubled in some way. Um, if it's not an actual young person, sometimes it can be more metaphorically referring to, like, a person who is dependent on others, right? So, like, I've had, elderly people show up as pages when they are, um, dependent on other people, right? In the way that a child is dependent, on other people. Um, they can also be students, or they can be, like, people below you, at work, that kind of thing too. And so you would know better from your own, context in life which of those things might fit in. But there's something to do with either getting a message that's unpleasant, or that has to do with a young person, or someone who's like, um, a student, or an apprentice, or like a new hire at work, that kind of thing. And so any of those could potentially show up. But so this is what we get to start, and whatever is going on with this person or message, it leads to a situation in which you have to think very carefully about, like, making a decision. Like, you are having to be very discerning and careful and methodical and structured in, how you are going to act. So you're weighing some options, perhaps, with the scales that we see here, and you've got your swords, so you're feeling like you need to, um, behave in a way that is cold mental calculation based on facts, as opposed to how's it gonna make me feel, or what sounds good. No, you need to behave or act in a way that follows the rules, that gets at the truth of the thing, and that is ruthlessly fair, would be a way of putting it. Think about justice, or like a judge, who isn't considering, like, well, here's what they were trying to do, or here's what I would prefer to do. No, it's, what does the law say? What is the structure? What is the um, the explicit, formal, correct way of doing this? And that's how it needs to be done, right? And so uh, that is the center card of the spread, and so that's sort of the general sense of what situation you can expect to come up for you, in this month ahead. And now, what does it relate to? Well, the three coins. And so, of course, my first thought, unless I have some other context, is to think about money, right? With three coins, we can think about, it's not a huge sum. Three coins is like a It's like maybe a little extra money you've saved up or money from a part-time job, or it's like an extra sack of money, but it's all, it's not 4 coins where 4 coins would be, just enough money to get by, and, 10 coins would be all the money you could ever want. 3 is like, well, it's a good chunk, but, it's not quite as much as you might like. And so it could be that you're needing to make a decision that like an uneasy message that you receive or something to do with whoever this page represents requires you to be very methodical and structured and careful and decisive about what you're doing with your money, right? About how you are investing your funds, where you're spending. Um, if the 3 of coins is referring to extra money that you've, like, set aside, it might be about, I don't know, an investment, or, like, should you spend it on a trip, or, like, what are you gonna do with it? It could also be if you are having money troubles that you're having to determine, like, if you don't have enough money at the end of the month, how what clearly structured choices can you make, and as fair as possible decisions can you make in order to stretch those 3 coins into the 4 that you need to, like, make things secure, for the end of the month. Um, and so when I see justice come up here, I would, first advise, breathe. Don't act quickly. Justice is not a fast card. Justice sits, thinks, takes their time, reads through everything, considers everything, hears all of the arguments, breathes. Think about like a courtroom. It's like quiet, it's solemn. There's a sense of seriousness about it. You can hear inhale when people breathe, you can like hear because it's so quiet. It's that kind of just solemnness. Take everything in, weigh it, and then decide with your sword here, how are you gonna cut up these coins? How are you gonna stretch them? What are you gonna do with them, right? So, um, that's the general situation. If there's anything there where, your own personal context, um, could lead to a more precise reading of any of those cards, I'd be happy to, add to this. But generally speaking, this is the kind of thing that I would anticipate in the month ahead. And good night, Bob. Sorry I didn't get to you last. So, Cat Goddess, does that is the we could talk about, I guess there's 2 things that I could take in different directions depending on what you know from your own circumstances and context. One is about whether the page is a troubling message or whether they represent a person. And then the second would be, I've been reading these coins as money, right? They could stand for something else, and if with a specific context, I can, um, potentially, read them as some other thing. But coins tend to be our assets, our means, our resources, what we use for buying and selling, right? For getting the things that we need, not only to survive, but to enjoy and all of that. They can also refer to our values, right? They represent value, that kind of thing. Okay, but if I'm not hearing, maybe we lost Cat Goddess. Oh, here we are. Keep feeling pulled to the last card, the Three of Coins, for some reason. Yeah, well, so, uh, it could be a little sack of money, as I said, and finding a method or a structure for how you're going to um, deal with that money, right? Invest it or spend it or whatever you need to do with it, given the context of this troubled person or message. Uh, if it's not money, with the Three of Coins, with threes, I can think of a growth, like things growing, and coins can be also your interest. If you think about the metaphor of like, money generates interest and things we're interested in. So a growing interest, right? With the Three of Coins, sometimes it'll show up as that. Like if there's a growing interest that you have in something that the upcoming month may require you to um, be decisive and oh, what is the word I'm looking for? Um, Discerning, right? Discerning in the details about that growing interest that you have. Which could also relate to money because so many of our interests require that we spend, that we invest in them, right? But if you're not investing money, maybe you're investing energy, right? You're investing your resources, like your time, your energy, your thoughts, your that kind of thing, too. And so it could, maybe there's someone who's kind of troubled at home, or you receive a troubling message that requires you to be very decisive about where you're putting your time, right? Where you're putting your one of all of our resources is time, We could think about, if that were the case, we could think about the way that each of the coins looks like a little clock, right? So I think in terms of like the prescriptive part of the reading of like how to handle what's coming to you in the month ahead, with justice there in the center, it would be take it slow, breathe, and make sure whatever actions or decisions you make have very strong and methodical reasoning behind them and are not made hastily and are not made 'cause it felt right or it was easy or, you know, it needs to be because you had very good evidence for doing what you did. Okay, so I think Bob Hope has perhaps left us Bob Hope, if you are here, I will read for you. Otherwise, I understand if you're welcome, Cat Goddess. I understand, Bob Hope, if you are no longer around. Um, so if you are here, let me know. Otherwise, I'm after my 3 hour mark, so I think I will wrap things up for the evening. It's approaching not dinner time, but getting dinner ready time here where I am. All right. So thank you to everyone who participated today and offered their questions and gave me the opportunity to read for them. I enjoyed it very much. For those of you that I didn't get to read for or haven't read for yet, I'd love to read for you in the future. I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. It's easier to see when I've scheduled a live stream, and I've been trying very hard to be better about scheduling them in advance as opposed to spontaneously hopping on, although I still may sometimes do that as well. As you know, at this point, I think I'm Will from the Hermit's Lantern Tarot. I'm also available for paid private readings, and you can check out the Linktree link in the description of the video for more information on those. I'm also available to via email at tarot.hermit.lantern@gmail.com. And feel free to email me there if you'd like to schedule a private reading that way. I think that will conclude today's live stream. Thanks for being kind to each other. I hope you all take good care of each other, be well, and I can't wait to see you all in the next live stream. Good night, everybody. Bye.